There's another class coming. Cuba, because there was a war, a big revolution, and my dad didn't like what was happening, so he left Cuba, and the first place he went to was Mexico. He was in Mexico for 6 months, and then he came to the United States. My dad was living in Miami, and he thought, any day I'm going to go back to Cuba. Any day that the revolution will be over, and I'll go back to Cuba, and it never changed for 60 years. My dad ended up living here. He's still here. The communist revolution in Cuba is still happening. It's a thing you learn about in history in junior high school, but it's something that was complicated, and my dad stayed. And my dad learned English. And then my dad met a woman who was learning Spanish. He said, "You're learning Spanish." She said, "You're learning English." And they got married. And they had me, and I grew up speaking Español con mi papá. I grew up speaking Spanish with my dad, who came from Cuba and ended up in the United States. And I spoke English with my mom. And then I spoke Spanish with my mom and English with my dad. And for 1 whole year, my life was perfect. And then, on my very first birthday, the day that I turned 1, my life went from being perfect to being not perfect. Why? Because my mom gave me the worst birthday gifts you can imagine. I heard somebody say bananas. I would have loved bananas. Somebody said, what did you say? No, she didn't give me 1 sibling. She gave me 2 siblings. On my birthday, my mom was at the hospital giving birth to twins. Now, I know that Miss Janine is a twin. How many of you have a twin here? How many of you have twins in your family? How many of you don't know what a twin is? My mom said that not only was I mad that she missed my first birthday. I, of course, don't remember this. I was 1 year old. I don't remember this. But my mom says that she was mad that she was missing my birthday. I didn't get anything for my first birthday at all. 2 days after my first birthday, that's when I got my birthday gifts. My baby brothers. My dad, and again, these are stories my family told me. And I remember them when I got older, because I was too young to remember. My mom said she was holding one little wrapped up, beautiful, sleeping baby in her arms. My dad was holding one beautiful, wrapped up, beautiful baby in his arms. And my mom said it took me about 3 minutes to realize that nobody was holding me. She said it looked like this. I was barely able to walk when I was 1 year old. But my mom literally had her arms full. My dad literally had his arms full. And I just sat there crying. And my mom didn't know what to do. And my dad didn't know what to do. And my mom said I was so mad. I waddled over and I went. Started trying to kick my mom. I was too small. It didn't hurt her. But and so she looked at me and the baby was asleep. And so very carefully she sat the baby in the crib. And she picked me up. I stopped crying. And the other twin was in my dad's arms. And that wrapped up beautiful baby was in the crib and he was fine for a while. And she said after a few minutes, even as small as he was, his eyes sort of opened up. And my dad didn't know what to do, and my mom didn't know what to do. She wasn't going to put me down, so my dad saw that his beautiful little wrapped up baby was asleep. He put that baby carefully in the crib. He picked up the crying baby. As soon as he did, that baby stopped crying. I was in my mom's arms. That baby was fine for about an hour. Everything was fine. Life was going to be okay. But all of a sudden, that baby woke up. And that baby looked up, and he looked at me. That baby cried and slept all the time. Well, after a while, my mom said that I loved those little babies. And my mom said that I would look at them starting to crawl. Oh, they're crawling. I look at them starting to walk. Oh, they're walking. I look at them starting to play with my toys. Wait a minute. And we began to fight. How many of you have ever had one fight with a brother or sister? How many of you have ever had one fight a day with your brother or sister? How many of you fight with your brother or sister all the time? We were fighting all the time, and one day my dad didn't know what to do, and he picked up the phone. In those days, he literally had to dial the number. How many of you remember dialing rotary phones? He dialed the number, and he was on the phone, and he was speaking Spanish to my grandmother. If you don't speak Spanish, I'll translate. He said, Abuela, Abuela, los tres hermanos están peleando aquí en la casa y yo no sé por qué hacer porque Roberto está llorando, Enrique está llorando, Antonio está llorando, mamá está llorando y yo también. He was talking to his mother, my grandmother. He said, Grandma, everybody is fighting, everybody is crying, I don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden he stopped crying. Ay, gracias, abuela, gracias, ay, gracias, abuela. He hung up the phone. A few weeks later, who showed up at our door? Abuela came to our house. Abuela came to live with us. Now there was 3 adults and 3 kids, and we loved all of those adults, and they loved all of us. And whenever one of us was sad, one of those adults would pick us up. Now sometimes it was just my abuela with the 3 kids. My dad would go to work, my mom would do something, and my brothers and I would start to fight. And my abuela would say, ay, mijito, no pelean cuando estás con tu abuela. Don't fight when grandma's here. Sometimes we keep fighting. Ay, mijitos, por favor, dejan de pelear. No more fighting. And sometimes we would fight, and other times we wouldn't. Ay, mijitos, escúchame! She'd reach into her huge apron pocket. She'd take out a great big wooden cuchara. She said, si van a pelear, pelean conmigo. She said, if you're gonna fight Grandma. We said, oh. She said, ¿quieren pelear con abuela? We said, oh. She said, ay, qué bien. And she used that spoon to make a great big pot of her famous black beans. Now, when we got older, my brothers and I now still fight a little bit, but my brothers and I are best friends. When we got a little bit older, my grandmother moved back to her home in Miami, Florida. And then we were continuing to grow up, still fighting sometimes, but not as bad. And when I got into about 3rd grade, I went into the classroom. I was in a new school, and I noticed that none of the kids spoke Spanish, just me. And I went home and I said, Papá, hay muchachos en la escuela que no hablan español. I said, there are kids at school that don't speak Spanish. She said, oh yeah, there's plenty of people in America that don't speak Spanish. It's okay. Okay, Papa. Next day I went to school, everyone spoke Spanish. I mean, everyone spoke English. Nobody spoke Spanish. Papa, not even anybody speaks Spanish, just me. I said, it's okay, mijo, no te preocupes. A few weeks later, one of the kids made fun of me for speaking Spanish. I went home and said, Papa, me burlan de mí porque hablo español. They were making fun of me because I spoke Spanish. She goes, ay, niño, that happens. People make fun of me for my accent. My dad has a very thick accent. He speaks English perfectly, but with a very thick accent. There are things he can't say very well in English, even though he tries. He said, don't worry about it, mijito. You love having Spanish. You get to talk to your grandmother in Spanish. She only speaks Spanish. Okay, Papa. A few days later, that kid was still making fun of me. I told the teacher, nothing happened. I went home and I said, Papa, no quiero hablar español. I never want to speak Spanish with you again. And if you spoke to me in Spanish, I'd answer him back in English. How many of you have parents that speak to you in Spanish and you answer them back in English? My dad said, mijito, don't worry about what that kid says. You need to learn Spanish. I said, Papa, we speak English. This is America. I know, mijito, but if you have another language, it helps you with so many things. I know, Papa, but I don't want to speak Spanish. He'd speak to me in Spanish. I'd answer in English. Spoke to me in Spanish. I'd answer in English. 5th grade, spoke to me in Spanish. Answer in English. 6th grade, spoke to me in Spanish. I didn't know what he was talking about. I forgot. 7th grade, I went down to visit my grandmother. I walked into my grandmother's house. She looked exactly the way I remembered her, just a lot shorter. Did she shrink, or did I grow, or a little bit of both? She looked up at me. Ay, niño. She calls me Papito. That's her nickname she gives me. Ay, Papito, ¿cómo tú estás? I said, hi, Grandma, how are you? She said, oye, ¿tú no hablas español? I said, hi, Grandma, have you learned English yet? ¿Qué estás haciendo? What are you saying? Hi, mijito. I said, oh, grandma. I couldn't understand my grandma. She said, mijito, ¿no puedes hablar español? I said, ¿de verdad? Grandma, what? She got sad. Then she got mad. And she reached into a huge apron pocket. She took out that spoon. She said, ven acá. She sat me down on the couch and we began to try to talk. She would read books to me in Spanish that were books for like 3-year-old kids, but she wanted me to speak Spanish again. We watched telenovelas together. Who's ever watched a telenovela? I'd watch these soap operas with my grandmother wanted me to speak. She would sing songs to me in Spanish, songs that you might know, songs that are nursery rhymes that repeat over and over again. Every night when I was in 7th grade, I was an old kid already. She would tuck me into bed and sing to me these little beautiful songs that you sing to babies in Cuba or Mexico. She'd say, Los pollitos dicen, pío, 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 cuando tienen hambre, cuando tienen frío. And with these songs and reading to me and watching soap operas in Spanish, by the end of that summer vacation, I could speak a little bit of Spanish again. In 8th grade, my dad said, it's summer vacation, where should we go? I said, I want to go see Abuela. We went down to Miami again, and there, more stories, more telenovelas, more songs in Spanish. 9th grade, the same thing. In 8th grade, my mom gave me a journal to write stories in. And what do you think some of those early stories were that I wrote? Not these books. I wrote a story called The Barking Mouse. Did you guys read The Barking Mouse? So this is what happened. My grandmother would sit on the couch. She would tell me a story or a joke, and all of my uncles and aunties and cousins would laugh. But I didn't know what it was, because I didn't know how to speak Spanish. I'd say, Tío, why is that funny? He said, ay, niño, tienes que aprender español. You need to learn Spanish. One of the jokes she told me, I'll tell it to you in Spanish, and I'll tell it in English afterwards. She said, había una vez una familia de ratones. Los ratoncitos se fueron a comer. Y ahí estuvieron ahí comiendo en un campo afuera, un día de campos. Cuando vino un gato de no sé dónde, ese gato quería comer los ratoncitos y los ratoncitos tiene mucho miedo, pero vino el gato abrió la boca para comer los ratoncitos y mamá ratón empezó a ladrar como un perro loco. El gato se puso así. ¿Qué pasó? El gato se fue corriendo. Mamá, digo, wow. Hermano, mi mamá no podía creerlo. Ella dijo, niños, mira, es muy importante hablar 2 idiomas. In English, a family of mice went on a picnic, and the mice were sitting eating the food, and a cat came to eat those mice. And the mice were scared, and that cat opened up its big jaws and was going to eat all 4 of those mice when Mama Mouse stood on her hind paws, looked right into the green eyes of that cat, and she started to bark like a crazy dog.
I remember that story.
You remember? She barked and barked and barked, and the cat said, whoa, this is weird. A barking mouse. It's not worth it. And the cat ran away. Mama couldn't believe it worked. Brother said, wow. Sister said, cool. Papa said, I knew I married the right woman. And when they got home nice and safe, Mama said to her children what my grandmother told me on the couch in her house when I was in 8th grade. She said, you see, kids, it pays to speak another language. Mm-hmm. The mouse could speak like a dog to scare the cat, and my grandmother told me I needed to speak Spanish with her. In 8th grade, I would write down that story. That was one of the first stories I wrote in my journal. I wrote about my grandmother and watching telenovelas, soap operas with my grandmother. I wrote about learning Spanish again. I wrote about her cooking black beans. I wrote about how we celebrate Christmas Eve with the Cuban family, La Noche Buena. I wrote about picking fruit from her trees. My grandmother didn't have a mango tree. She had an orange tree and a grapefruit tree. And the first time I tried to pick a grapefruit, I got stung by a bee. I wrote about my grandmother making fun of my dad. I wrote about my cousin making fun of my grandmother. I wrote about the time my old auntie sat at the table. She said, yo quiero aprender inglés. I want to learn English. I said, Nina, you're 90 years old. You're too old to learn English. No, yo puedo aprender inglés. Dime una palabra inglés. I said, okay, Nina, I'll teach you a word in English. Napkin. She said, nyai in. No, Nina. Napkin. Napkin. No, starting a napkin. She said, yeah. I wrote these small snippets of story. That's the background. My dad who speaks Spanish, my mom who speaks English. I grew up speaking both. Didn't want to speak Spanish. My grandmother said I needed to speak Spanish again. And when I got much older, my grandmother got much older. My grandmother was 91 years old when she finally died. And I was so sad. I missed her so much. And the first thing I did was I went through those journals and I read, that story when she did this. Oh, and when she did that. Oh, and the barking mouse. And I told my friends some of those stories. They would say, I'm sorry your grandmother died. Yeah, she was really old. I'm sorry she died too. But she told me about this family of mice. My friend said, oh, that's so funny. You should tell other people that story. I went and told other people that story. Somebody said, you should come to my school and tell stories to those kids. I went to the school and told stories to those kids. One principal said, you should come to my school and I'll pay you money to tell those stories. You'll pay me money to tell these stories? She said, yeah. I went to that school and told those stories and they paid me money for those stories. Do you know what your school is doing right now? Paying me money for these stories. Because I speak Spanish, because I wrote down the stories from my grandmother, because I missed her when she died, because I began to share those stories, years later, I became a storyteller that schools paid for me to tell stories. And then, 12 years ago, before some of you were born, I met an author named Juan Felipe Herrera. Have you ever heard of this author? Do you know who this is? He's a semi-famous California author. I met him at a library. We were telling stories at the library. He heard me tell the barking mouse story. He said,